Nobody understood why Axl Rose returned to the studio that October night. There was no scheduled session, no cameras waiting, no fans at the door. Just him, the darkness, and a wooden box on the piano with his name handwritten in golden ink. What was inside wasn't a simple object. It was a message from the other side. And when Axl finally held it in his hands, something broke inside him in a way he never imagined possible. Exactly 7 days had passed since Ace Frehley's death. 17 days of television tributes, of rushed documentaries, of famous musicians posting old photos with emotional messages. The rock world still hadn't processed it. The entire community remained in shock. But amid all that media noise, Axl Rose remained in absolute silence. He posted nothing on Instagram. He didn't tweet condolences. He gave no statements to Rolling Stone. He simply disappeared. His close friends knew why. Axl doesn't process death like the rest of the world. He doesn't believe in public tributes. He doesn't like turning pain into content. For him, loss is something private, something lived in silence, something honored without cameras. He was at his Malibu home when the doorbell rang that Tuesday afternoon. His security assistant checked the cameras and saw a man in his 50s. He wore dark jeans and a Kiss shirt worn by time. He carried in his hands a small package wrapped in golden paper with a black ribbon. He said his name was Daniel, that he had been the Frehley family's personal assistant for the past few years, and that he was bringing something Ace had left specifically for Axl Rose. Something he asked to be delivered only after his death. Security normally didn't let anyone through without an appointment. But there was something in the way that man held the package, something in the urgency of his voice, something that made them call Axl directly. Axl came down personally, opened the door. And there was Daniel, with moist eyes, extending the package with slightly trembling hands. "Ace asked me to deliver this to you after," Daniel said with a broken voice. "He said you'd know what to do with this when the time came." Axl took the package without saying a word. It was small but weighed more than it seemed. The golden paper shone under the afternoon light. The black ribbon was tied with a perfect knot. He thanked Daniel with a nod and closed the door softly. He climbed the stairs to his main room, the one where he has the black grand piano that has witnessed so many compositions. He left the package on the keys and simply looked at it for several minutes. Without moving, barely breathing. He didn't open it that day, not the next day either. The package remained there for 5 full days, intact, waiting. Every time Axl entered that room, he saw it. Sometimes he approached, touched the golden paper with his fingertips, felt its texture. But he always walked away without opening it, because opening that gift meant something definitive. It meant accepting that Ace really was gone, that he had planned his absence, that he had thought of Axl even knowing he wouldn't be there to see his reaction. Friends who visited those days noticed the package, asked what it was. Axl only responded, "Something from Ace, I'm not ready yet." And he wasn't. Because posthumous gifts have a different weight. They carry the weight of last wishes, of final messages, of everything that couldn't be said in life. But unopened gifts also weigh heavily. They have their own invisible gravity. And each passing day, the weight became more unbearable. It was Saturday night when something changed. Axl was alone in the house. All the staff had left. The night was clear. He could hear the waves breaking against the rocks. And suddenly he felt it was time. There was no specific reason, no divine sign. He simply knew he had waited enough, that it was time to face whatever that package contained. He turned on only the piano lights. The rest of the room remained in shadows. He took the package with both hands. His fingers trembled as he undid the knot of the black ribbon. The golden paper fell slowly, revealing a wooden box. It wasn't just any wood. It was dark mahogany, polished to a shine, and on the lid, engraved with artisanal precision, was a symbol, a 4-pointed star. The same symbol Ace used in his iconic makeup. Axl ran his fingers over the engraved star. He could feel every line, every groove. The work was beautiful. Someone had put hours into creating that box. He took a deep breath and opened it. Inside, on a black velvet lining, rested a guitar pick. But it wasn't an ordinary pick. It was silver. It shone as if it had its own light. It had Ace's name engraved on one side, and on the other, a single word, Continue. Next to the pick was a folded note, thick cream-colored paper. Axl took it with trembling fingers, unfolded it, and immediately recognized Ace's handwriting. The note said, "For when you feel the music fading, play with this and remember why we started." Just those 2 lines, nothing more. But they were enough to make Axl feel something breaking in his chest. He took the silver pick. It was heavier than he expected, cold to the touch. But the longer he held it, the warmer it became, as if it absorbed the heat from his skin, as if it came to life. He looked at it under the light. It shone with reflections that seemed to move. And for a moment, just for a moment, Axl felt something strange, like a presence, as if he wasn't alone in that room. He kept the pick in his shirt pocket, next to his heart, and he sat there for hours, without moving, without speaking, just processing the weight of that gift. The meaning of those words, "For when you feel the music fading." How did Ace know? How did he know that Axl had been struggling with exactly that? With the feeling that something had gone out inside him, that inspiration had left, that passion was dying. It had been a secret he shared with no one. But Ace had known somehow. He had seen it. He had understood it. And he had left him this. The following days were strange. Axl didn't touch the pick. He carried it in his pocket all the time. He felt it there, against his chest. But he didn't use it. He didn't dare. Because using that pick meant something. It meant accepting the message, accepting the responsibility to continue. Another week passed, then another. The pick remained in his pocket, untouched, waiting for its moment. Until that October night arrived, the night everything changed. It was 2 in the morning. Axl couldn't sleep. It wasn't unusual. Insomnia had been his companion for decades. He got out of bed and went down to the living room. The piano was there, silent, waiting. He sat in front of it, put his hands on the keys but didn't press them, just left them there, feeling the cold ivory, and then he remembered the pick. He took it out of his pajama pocket, held it under the moonlight coming through the windows. It shone with that silver gleam that seemed not of this world. For when you feel the music fading, something inside told him it was time, that he had waited enough, that Ace had left him this for a reason, and that reason was in front of him right now. He got up from the piano, walked to his private studio, that space where he kept his most precious guitars. He took his black Les Paul, the one he had used in 1,000 shows, the one he knew like the back of his hand. He returned to the living room, sat on the couch, positioned the guitar, and for the first time, held Ace's silver pick between his fingers, ready to play. The silence was absolute. Only the distant waves could be heard, his own breathing, and the beating of his heart. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and played the first chord, and that's when it happened. The sound was different, completely different, cleaner than ever, brighter, more alive. As if the guitar had awakened after a long sleep, as if each string had its own voice. Axl opened his eyes surprised, looked at the pick, looked at the guitar, and played again. The second chord was even more striking. It resonated in the room in a way that defied physics. The walls seemed to vibrate. The air itself seemed to move with the music. He didn't know if it was his imagination. He didn't know if it was the emotion of the moment. He didn't know if it was something else. But he would swear by everything sacred, that for a few seconds he heard another guitar responding. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't his own guitar. It was another sound, another instrument, playing in perfect harmony with his, completing the musical phrases, responding to every note he created. It was as if Ace was there, as if he had returned just to play one more time. Axl stopped playing abruptly. His heart was beating so hard he could hear it in his ears. His hands trembled. He looked around the room. He was alone, completely alone. But the feeling didn't go away. The presence remained there, invisible but undeniable. He played again, this time with more confidence. And there it was again, that other guitar, that other sound, like a musical conversation with someone who was no longer physically present, but who continued to exist in some inexplicable way. Tears began to fall down Axl's face without him being able to control them. They weren't tears of sadness. They were of gratitude, of awe, of something that had no name, He played for hours that night, without stopping, without thinking, just feeling. Each chord was a question. Each invisible response was a confirmation. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't imagining things. Something real was happening. And at some point, near dawn, Axl fully understood what Ace had done. He hadn't left him a simple pick. He had left him a connection, a bridge between two worlds, a way to keep playing together, even after death. Because that's what music does. It transcends. It crosses barriers. It connects souls separated by time and space. And this pick, in some way that Axl couldn't explain but felt deeply, was the physical manifestation of that connection. When the sun began to rise, Axl finally stopped playing. He was physically exhausted but spiritually renewed. Something had changed inside him that night. Something fundamental. The music hadn't gone out. It had never gone out. It had just been waiting for the right moment, the right tool, the right permission to shine again. He sat there, with the guitar in his lap and the pick clutched in his hand, until the sun completely flooded the room with golden light. And then for the first time in weeks, Axl smiled. A genuine smile, full of peace, full of renewed purpose. He fell to his knees without planning it. Not from pain, not from fear, but from absolute and uncontainable gratitude. Because in that moment, he understood that Ace's gift wasn't just a guitar pick. It was a promise. The promise that he would never be alone as long as he had music. The promise that Ace would still be there, somehow, in every note he played. The promise to keep going forward without ever stopping. The following days were different, completely different. Axl returned to the studio with an energy no one had seen in years. He composed, he recorded, he experimented with new sounds. His producers didn't understand what had changed, but they could clearly see it. There was a light in his eyes that wasn't there before. And every time, absolutely every time he played, he used Ace's silver pick. It became his most precious tool, more important than any guitar, more valuable than any award. Because it wasn't just silver metal with an engraved name. It was a living connection with someone who had understood his soul. Weeks later, in a surprise interview he gave to a small independent rock radio station, he mentioned the gift publicly for the first time. "Ace left me something before he passed," he said with a calm but firm voice. "Something that changed everything for me." They asked him what it was. Axl thought for a long moment, and then he spoke. "A guitar pick. But it's not just that. It's much more than that. It's a reminder of why I do this, of why any of us do this. For the music itself, for the connection, for something bigger than us." He paused. "And every time I play with it, I swear I can feel him. As if he's still there, as if we're still playing together. Some will say it's madness, that it's my imagination, that it's grief, but I know what I feel, and I choose to call it faith." The interview went viral. Millions of people listened to it. Thousands commented. And what impacted most wasn't the gift itself, but the transformation it had caused in Axl. There was something different in his voice, something calmer, more centered, as if he had found something he had been searching for years without knowing it. Months later, during a small, intimate concert at a Los Angeles theater, Axl did something unprecedented. Before playing his last song, he showed the pick to the audience. "A brother left me this before he passed," he said as he held it under the stage light so everyone could see it shine. "He told me to use it when I felt the music fading." And it worked, because music never really goes out. It just needs the right reminder to shine again. The theater fell into absolute silence. "This song is new. I wrote it using this pick, and it's my way of saying thank you, of telling him I understood the message, that I'm going to continue, that we're going to continue. Because that's what we do. We keep playing, always." And then he played. And the sound that came from that guitar was something no one in the theater would ever forget. It was pure music, without filters, without poses, without anything except the deepest truth expressed in notes and chords. When it ended, the silence lasted several seconds. And then, an ovation that made the walls tremble. People crying, hugging each other, feeling they had witnessed something sacred. That night, dozens of people posted videos of the moment. And although the quality varied, The emotional impact transcended any technical limitation. The most viewed video accumulated millions of views in days. And thus, without planning it, without corporate strategy, Ace's message reached the whole world. Not through press releases or official documentaries, but through the music itself, through a simple gift that became something extraordinary. The pic was never exhibited in any museum. Axl rejected offers from collectors who offered obscene sums for it. It's not for sale, it never will be, because it's not mine to sell. It's a loan, a responsibility, a reminder. And every night, before sleeping, Axl keeps it in the wooden box with the engraved star. He places it on the black velvet, closes the lid carefully, and silently thanks Ace for having left him exactly what he needed at the exact moment he needed it. Because that's what true brothers do. True friends, true rock warriors. They take care of each other even after death. They leave tools for others to continue. They build bridges that transcend time. And that silver pick with Ace's name engraved became much more than a physical object. It became a symbol, a legend. Proof that love and connection don't end when the heart stops beating. Since then, every time Axl plays that guitar, he uses that pick. Without exception, he says it's his way of playing with Ace once more, of keeping that connection alive, of honoring that gift that arrived from the other side. Some call it madness, others call it illusion, many call it a beautiful marketing story, but Axl simply calls it faith. Faith that music is bigger than us. Faith that real connections transcend death. Faith that as long as you keep playing, you'll never truly be alone. And when they ask him if he really believes Ace is there when he plays, Axl always answers the same. I don't know if he's in the room. I don't know if it's his spirit or just my memory, but I know what I feel, and I feel he's still with me. And that's enough. Because in the end, that's what matters. Not scientific explanations, not empirical evidence, but what we feel, what moves us, what keeps us creating when it would be easier to give up. Ace Frehley died, it's true, but his legacy lives on in ways no one could have predicted, in a silver pick, in the hands of a rock brother, in the music that continues to be created, thanks to that simple but profound gift. And every time someone hears that story, every time they see that concert video, every time they decide to move forward with their own passion despite difficulties, Ace is there, in spirit, in inspiration, in the faith that art transcends everything. If this story moved you, if you felt something real while listening to it, share in the comments. What object connects you with someone who is no longer here? What keeps you playing when you feel the music fading? Because we all have our own silver pick. We just need to recognize it. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that go to the heart of rock, that show the magic behind the legends, that remind us that music is much more than sound. See you in the next story, and remember, music never goes out. It's just waiting for you to turn it on again. Nobody was prepared to see him there, much less to hear him speak. Axl Rose never goes to funerals, never. But that October afternoon, when he pushed open the door of that chapel in Los Angeles, everyone in the rock world knew something extraordinary was about to happen. And when he finally took the microphone, even the toughest guys in the business couldn't hold back their tears. But to understand why those words hit so hard, we need to go back a few years, because this story doesn't start at a funeral. It starts on a night in 1988, in a smoke-filled, alcohol-soaked backstage, where two men who barely knew each other shared something that would change their lives forever. Axl Rose and Ace Frehley weren't close friends. They didn't call each other on Sundays. They didn't go to dinner together or share family vacations. But they understood each other in a way that only those who have been at the absolute top and also in the darkest abyss can understand. Both had been born from the pure chaos of rock and roll. Both knew the real price of success, the endless nights where time loses meaning, the packed stadiums roaring your name until they're hoarse, and then that terrifying silence when the lights go out and you're completely alone in a hotel room you don't recognize, in a city whose name you forgot. When Axl received the news of Ace's death, he was at his Malibu home. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The sun was shining outside, ironic and cruel. His personal assistant walked into the room with the phone in hand, and a completely shattered expression. His eyes were red. His hands were shaking. He didn't need to say anything. Axl knew immediately that something terrible had happened, something irreversible. He remained motionless for several seconds, looking out the window toward the ocean without saying a word, processing. And then, without warning, he got up and went to his room. He didn't post anything on social media. He didn't send press releases. He didn't call any journalists. He didn't talk to MTV or Rolling Stone. He simply took his black leather jacket from the closet, the one he had worn on the Use Your Illusion tour, canceled 3 important commitments he had that week, and booked a private flight for that same night. Because when rock and roll loses one of its own, one of the true warriors, words are superfluous. The only thing that matters is being present. But there's something almost nobody knows. Something that never came out in the specialized magazines or in VH1 documentaries. Something that was never mentioned in interviews or recorded in official biographies. A story that connects these two men in an unexpected, profound, and absolutely real way. It was 1991. Guns N' Roses was at its most explosive and chaotic moment. Use Your Illusion I and II had just been released and had detonated like nuclear bombs in the music industry. The whole world was singing November Rain in the shower. Sweet Child O' Mine was playing on every radio on the planet. Axl Rose was, without question, one of the biggest rock stars. His name was everywhere, his face on every cover. But inside, Axl was completely destroyed. Fame was devouring him alive, piece by piece. The constant fights with band members, the unbearable pressure from record labels, the impossible expectations of millions of fans around the world, the media that crucified him for every mistake, every statement, every minute of delay at concerts. Everything had become too big, too fast, too intense. One night, after an exhausting show at Madison Square Garden in New York, Axl escaped from the official after-party. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. Not his manager, not his security team, not the band members. He simply walked out a back door and disappeared into the streets of Manhattan. He needed air. He needed silence. He needed to disappear, even if just for a few hours. He walked aimlessly through the dark streets of New York for more than an hour. Hood up, hands in pockets, watching normal people living normal lives. People who could walk without being recognized. People who didn't carry the weight of a musical empire on their shoulders. And then, almost by accident, almost by the design of fate, he ended up in front of a small, run-down bar in the Lower East Side. A dark place with a broken neon sign that said, "The Blue Note." From outside, you could hear live music, electric guitar, raw, honest, real. Axl pushed open the door and entered without anyone recognizing him. The place was filled with cigarette smoke. It smelled of spilled beer and broken dreams. There were about 30 people total, some sitting at the bar drinking in silence, others standing near the small makeshift stage. And there, under a flickering yellow light, was Ace Frehley playing his guitar as if his life depended on it. It wasn't an announced concert. There was no press waiting outside, no cameras or interviews, no fans screaming his name. Just Ace, his black Gibson, a crackly amplifier, and a tiny audience watching him with absolute devotion. Axl sat at the bar. He ordered a double whiskey, and for the next 40 minutes, he saw something that changed his perspective on rock and roll forever. He saw a man who had been at the absolute top of the world with Kiss. A man who had sold over 100 million records, who had played in front of packed stadiums on every continent, who had been worshipped by crowds numbering in the millions, and who now played in a dark, half-empty bar in the Lower East Side, as if it were the first time he'd picked up a guitar, as if every chord were a gift, as if every note mattered more than any sold-out stadium. The intensity was brutal. The honesty was heartbreaking. There were no poses, no performance, no marketing or image to maintain. Just a man and his instrument speaking a language that transcended words. When the set ended, Ace came down from the stage, drenched in sweat. He wiped his forehead with an old towel. He approached the bar, walking with that characteristic guitarist gait, his back slightly hunched from so many years carrying instruments. He recognized Axl immediately despite the hood. Their eyes met for a second. Ace nodded. He sat down next to him without saying anything. He ordered a double bourbon, drank it in one gulp, ordered another, and finally, after a long, comfortable silence, he spoke. "You know what the real problem with getting to the top too fast is?" Ace asked without looking at him directly, his gaze fixed on his glass. "That you completely forget why you started. You forget about that kid who picked up a guitar for the first time just because it made him happy." Axl didn't respond. He just looked at him sideways, listening, absorbing every word like water in the desert. "I once played in front of 100,000 people at the same time," Ace continued in a hoarse, tired voice, but also strangely calm. "And it was incredible. I'm not going to lie to you. It was like being on top of the world, like being a god for 2 hours every night. But it was also a death trap, because you start playing for them, not for yourself. You start being exactly what they expect you to be. You start playing a character you created but no longer control. And one day, you wake up at 3 in the afternoon, in a room you don't recognize. You look in the mirror, and you don't know who the hell the guy looking back at you is." Axl took a long, bitter sip of his whiskey. He felt it burn his throat, burn his soul. "So why do you play here then?" he finally asked. "Why do you play in this place for 30 people when you could be in a stadium?" Ace smiled for the first time that night. A sad but genuine smile. A smile from someone who had found something valuable after losing everything. "Because here I can be myself again. Here the music becomes exactly what it was when I was 16 and dreaming of being a guitarist. When I played in my parents' garage until the neighbors called the police. Here there are no impossible expectations, no manager pressuring me, no record label demanding commercial hits, just notes, just music, just that magical connection between the instrument and the soul. And that, brother, that's the only truly real thing in this shitty business." That conversation lasted less than 15 minutes total, but Axl never, ever forgot it. It became a compass, a lighthouse in the middle of the storm. Every time he felt he was getting lost in the character, every time the media circus of rock became too big, too fake, too overwhelming, he remembered those words from Ace Frehley in that dark New York bar. They said goodbye with a handshake, without exchanging phone numbers, without promising to stay in touch, because they both knew that moment was perfect just as it was. That some conversations don't need a continuation. The years passed as they always do in rock and roll. Fast, chaotic, relentless. Guns N' Roses broke up amid public fights and lawsuits. Then they reunited decades later for a multi-million-dollar tour. Axl disappeared from the public eye for entire seasons. He became a recluse, a ghost of his own legend. Ace continued his own tortuous path, playing, composing, falling into addictions, getting up, falling again, but always, absolutely always with the guitar in his hand. They didn't see each other in person again after that night. They only crossed paths from afar at award ceremonies or massive festivals. A nod from a distance, a knowing smile through the smoke and crowds. Nothing more than that. But there was a deep respect there. A silent recognition between two survivors of the same war, between two men who had looked into the abyss and decided not to jump. And then came October 2025, a month that would change everything. Ace had gone through difficult times in recent years, serious heart problems, complicated surgeries. The doctors had warned him that he had to slow down, that he had to take care of himself, that the body wasn't immortal even if the spirit felt eternal. But Ace didn't know how to live any other way. He kept playing in small venues. He kept composing new songs in his home studio. He kept being that unbreakable warrior who never, under any circumstances, gave up. Until one October night, his heart simply decided otherwise. He died peacefully, in his own home, surrounded by guitars he had collected during 50 years of career, surrounded by gold and platinum records covering the walls, surrounded by photographs of all the stages he had conquered. He was 74 years old. He had lived 3 lives in one. And when he closed his eyes for the last time, the rock and roll world stopped completely. The tributes started coming immediately from all corners of the planet. Paul Stanley published a long emotional message remembering the best years of Kiss. Gene Simmons, despite all the fights and conflicts they had had, wrote words of respect and admiration. Slash shared an old photo of the two of them playing together at an 80s festival. Metallica, Aerosmith, Lenny Kravitz. Everyone published messages remembering his legacy. Everyone talked about his influence. Everyone said how important Ace Frehley had been to rock. But from Axl Rose, nothing. Absolute silence. Not a tweet, not an Instagram post, not an official statement. Nothing. The specialized press began to speculate wildly. Why isn't Axl Rose saying anything about Ace Frehley's death? Could there be some unresolved problem between them? Could it be that Axl simply doesn't care? Comments on social media multiplied exponentially. Some criticized him harshly for his silence. Others defended him, saying that grief is personal. But nobody, absolutely nobody, knew the truth. The truth was much simpler and much deeper. Axl couldn't write anything because words seemed completely insufficient to him. Because he knew deep in his being that this specific loss needed something more than a generic social media message. It needed presence, it needed action, it needed to be there. The funeral was organized for the following Saturday in a historic chapel in Los Angeles. A beautiful but intimate place, made of old stone and colorful stained glass, away from the constant noise of the media. Ace's family asked for total privacy. They requested that only truly close musicians and lifelong friends attend. People who had really known him. Not celebrities looking for cameras. Not opportunists wanting press. Just real people with real pain. That Saturday morning, the sky over Los Angeles was completely gray, heavy, dense like a wet blanket. It wasn't raining yet, but it threatened to at any moment. The clouds gathered dark and low, as if the sky itself were in mourning. The chapel was small compared to the stadiums where Ace had shone. Capacity for maybe 150 people, stone walls that had seen decades of farewells, old stained glass windows that filtered a golden, melancholic light even on that gray day, a high dark wood ceiling with exposed beams, oak pews polished by generations of pain. Inside, the pews filled quickly. Musicians from all eras and all genres, faces that had shared stages with Ace at different moments of his life. People who had seen him shine at his peak and also fall in his darkest moments. All there, all in silence, all processing the impossibility that someone so full of life was no longer there. There were guitars leaning against the stone walls. 6 in total, each one carefully selected. Each represented a different stage of his life. His first cheap Gibson that he had bought secondhand when he was 16. The one he used recording the legendary Kiss album, Alive. The one he played on his first solo album when he left the band. The one he used in his reunion with Kiss in the 90s. The last one he had bought just 6 months ago. All there, like silent witnesses to a life completely dedicated to 6 strings and an amplifier. The casket was closed, as the family had requested. Covered with a special flag someone had made, it mixed the stars and stripes of the United States with the iconic Kiss logo, and on it, perfectly centered, a single white rose. The service began promptly at 3 in the afternoon. A soft-voiced pastor spoke for 15 minutes about legacy, about family, about the love that Ace had left in this world. His words were beautiful but generic. Because how do you summarize a life like that in words? How do you capture the essence of a man who had lived so intensely? Then one of Ace's sons went up to the microphone. A man in his 40s with the same eyes as his father. His voice broke several times as he spoke. He had to stop to breathe, to wipe away tears. He spoke of an imperfect but present father, of a man who loved music more than almost anything in the world except his children, of someone who had taught them that pursuing your dreams isn't selfishness, it's courage. Then a band formed by close friends of Ace went up. Musicians he had played with in different projects over the years. They covered Shock Me, one of Ace's most emblematic songs, which he had written after almost electrocuting himself on stage. The performance was technically perfect, emotionally devastating, but there was a heavy sadness in every note. Because everyone knew, everyone felt that they would never again hear those specific riffs with the wild and unique intensity of the original. The ceremony was officially coming to an end. The pastor was preparing to give the final words of farewell. People began to prepare themselves mentally and emotionally for the last goodbye. To close that chapter, to accept the unacceptable, and then without warning, the main door of the chapel opened. The sound of the old heavy door resonated like thunder in the absolute silence. An instant murmur ran through the chapel like a wave. 150 heads turned back at the same time. 150 pairs of eyes opened in surprise. It was Axl Rose. He wore a worn black leather jacket that had seen 1,000 stages, dark jeans, black boots, and sunglasses, despite the dim light inside. In his right hand, he carried a white rose, identical to the one resting on the casket, as if they had been cut from the same plant. He walked down the center aisle without looking at any of those present. His steps echoed against the old wooden floor, each step measured, each step firm. There was no rush, no doubt, no hesitation, just absolute determination. The murmur grew. People whispered, "It's Axl. I can't believe it." He came. He really came. He reached the front of the chapel. He stopped directly in front of the casket. He slowly removed his dark glasses and put them in the pocket of his jacket. And for several eternal seconds, he simply looked at the casket in silence. His eyes were completely red, swollen. His jaw clenched so tightly you could see the tense muscles. He gently placed the white rose next to the other. He touched the casket with the palm of his right hand. A soft touch, reverent, as if touching something sacred. And then, slowly, he turned toward the audience. The silence became total, absolute, mystical. You couldn't even hear breathing. It was as if time itself had stopped. Axl hadn't planned to speak. He hadn't prepared a speech. He hadn't written notes. He hadn't told anyone he was coming. But in that precise moment, standing in front of all those people, he felt he had to do it. For Ace, for that night in the New York bar that had changed his life, for all the conversations they never had but that existed in shared glances and gestures of mutual understanding. He looked directly at Ace's son. Then he scanned the musicians present with his gaze. And finally, with a hoarse, broken voice, he spoke. "I don't go to funerals," he began, and his voice resonated in the old chapel. "I never go, because I don't know what to say, because I hate goodbyes, because I don't believe in closure." He paused for a long time, swallowed with difficulty. "But I had to be here, because Ace saved me once, and he doesn't even know it. He probably didn't even remember it." Another dense silence. People collectively held their breath. It was 1991. I was on top of the world according to everyone else. But inside I was completely lost. Success was slowly killing me. And one night, escaping from my own life, I walked into a bar in New York and saw him play. For 30 people. Maybe less. As if it were 30,000. As if every note were the only thing that mattered in the entire universe. His voice began to break visibly. He had to stop. Breathe. And after playing, he sat down next to me at the bar and told me something that changed my life. He told me that the problem with getting to the top too fast is that you forget why you started. About that kid who just wanted to make music. Axl closed his eyes for a long moment. Tears began to run down his cheeks. He didn't try to hide them. Ace reminded me that night that music isn't about fame. It's not about how many records you sell or how many stadiums you fill. It's not about magazine covers or Grammy awards. It's about that sacred moment when you pick up a guitar and everything else disappears. It's about that indescribable feeling that you're touching something bigger than yourself, something eternal. He opened his eyes. They were completely flooded with tears. We all sing about living fast and dying young. We all make songs about rebellion and chaos and destruction. But Ace taught me something completely different. He taught me that the real courage, the real rock and roll, is in continuing. In getting up every morning when the audience has gone home. In playing even when nobody's listening. In being faithful to the music when the music is no longer profitable or popular or commercial. His voice broke completely. He had to stop, breathe deeply, wipe his eyes with the back of his hand like a child. And that's the most punk rock thing there is. That's the most honest. That's the bravest. Several people in the chapel began to cry openly, sobs they couldn't contain anymore. Ace wasn't perfect, Axl continued with a trembling voice. None of us are. He fell many times. He fought with his own demons for decades. He made mistakes, made bad decisions, hurt people, like all of us. But never, ever, under any circumstances, did he stop playing. And that makes him bigger than any stadium he ever filled in his life. He looked directly at the casket, as if he could see through it. Thank you, brother, for that night in the bar, for reminding me who I really was, for showing me that rock isn't an act you perform. It's a way of living, a way of breathing. He made one last long pause, and with a barely audible voice, almost a whisper that somehow everyone heard perfectly, he said, "See you on the other side. I'm sure there's a stage waiting for us, and this time we're going to play together." And then he did something that nobody, absolutely nobody expected. Something that wasn't planned or coordinated. He slowly approached one of the guitars leaning against the stone wall, the black Gibson, Ace's favorite, the one he had played in 1,000 shows, the one that had recorded dozens of legendary songs. He took it with an almost religious reverence. As if holding a sacred relic, he carefully strapped it on, adjusted the strap, touched the strings gently to verify it was tuned, and without saying another word, without asking anyone's permission, he began to play. It wasn't a complete song, just a riff, slow, melancholic, but immediately recognizable to everyone in that chapel. It was the unmistakable intro to New York Groove, one of Ace's biggest hits as a solo artist. The song that had defined him outside of Kiss. Axl didn't sing. He didn't say anything. He just let the guitar speak. And during those minutes that felt eternal, the chapel was completely transformed. It was no longer a place of death. It became a place of celebration, of living memory, of pure gratitude. The pain was still there, but now it was accompanied by something more, something luminous, something that felt like love. Some musicians began to softly mark the rhythm with their hands. Others hugged each other, crying. Ace's son closed his eyes and smiled for the first time in days. When Axl finished playing the riff, he let the last note extend in the air until it naturally faded, until it became silence again. He returned the guitar to its place with the same care with which he had taken it. He gave one last touch to the casket with both hands, and without looking at anyone, without saying goodbye, he walked toward the exit. He didn't stay for the burial. He didn't talk to the family. He didn't give interviews to the press, waiting outside like vultures. He didn't sign autographs or take photos with fans. He simply got in his car and disappeared into the streets of Los Angeles. But he left something invaluable in that chapel. He left a lesson that everyone would carry with them. A reminder that rock and roll isn't about carefully calculated poses or marketing strategies. It's about brutal authenticity, deep respect, staying true to what you love even when the whole world forgets you. In the following days, someone had filmed that moment with their phone. The video went viral in a matter of hours. Millions of views on the first day, tens of millions in the first week, thousands of comments from people around the world crying in front of their screens. Because it wasn't just a tribute to Ace Frehley, it was a tribute to all the unknown musicians who play in empty bars, to all those who keep composing even when nobody's listening, to all those who choose music over money, fame, and expectations. Weeks later, in a brief interview he gave to an independent rock magazine, they asked Axl why he had gone to the funeral if he never goes to funerals. His answer was simple, direct, devastating, because I owed it to be there. And because I wanted his family to know something fundamental, that Ace changed lives without even realizing it. He changed mine, and probably those of many others who never told him. Ace Frehley's death left an immense void in the rock world, a hole that can never be filled, but it also left an absolutely indelible legacy. Every guitar that sounds in a suburban garage, every kid who dreams of being a musician, despite everyone telling him it's impossible, every person who chooses to follow their passion, even though the path is incredibly difficult and painful. All of that is part of what Ace built. All of that is his real monument, and Axl knows it better than anyone. That's why he went to the funeral. That's why he took that guitar. That's why he spoke with his heart completely open in front of a chapel full of strangers. Because deep down, we're all part of the same band. We all play on the same cosmic stage, and when one of us leaves, the show must go on. Not out of obligation, not for money, but out of love, out of respect, out of infinite gratitude. That gray afternoon in Los Angeles, under a sky that threatened to cry but held back, Axl Rose reminded the whole world of something absolutely fundamental. Legends don't die when they stop breathing. They die when we stop telling their stories, when we stop playing their songs, when we forget the lessons they left us, when we allow their spirit to fade. And as long as there's someone willing to pick up a guitar and play with their soul completely exposed, Ace Frehley will remain alive. As long as there's a musician who chooses honesty over commerciality, Ace will be there. As long as there's someone who gets up after falling, who keeps playing when nobody's listening, who keeps the flame alive, Ace will never truly die. Because rock and roll isn't a musical genre. It's not a style of clothing or a specific hairstyle. It's an indomitable spirit and attitude toward life, a way of facing existence with absolute courage and brutal authenticity, a way of saying, "This is me, and I'm not going to change for anyone." And that is eternal. That never dies. If this story touched your heart in some way, if you felt something real while listening to it, I invite you to share in the comments what song marked you most in your life. What artist changed your perspective? What musical moment saved you when you needed it most? Because those stories are exactly what keeps music alive. They're the true legacy. And if you want to keep discovering stories like this, stories of genuine respect, authentic legacy, humanity behind rock legends, subscribe to the channel. Because every week we bring stories that go beyond the shiny surface. Stories that make you feel, that remind you why music truly matters in our lives. See you in the next tribute. Because as long as there's memory, as long as there's gratitude, as long as there's someone willing to keep the flame alive, rock legends never ever die.